For most of the world, the summer of 2020 has been unlike any other, for a variety of reasons. As we try to adjust to events around us, some families have faced even larger challenges as they search for their missing loved ones. Hopefully, spreading awareness of these relatively recent cases can help bring some answers. These are 5 missing persons cases from the summer. Number 5. A 69-year-old grandmother from Fort Worth, Texas, has been missing since July 11th. Carolyn Riggins had just won big on the bingo when she left Watauga Road Bingo Hall that evening. However, instead of returning home, Carolyn disappeared and hasn't been seen since. It wasn't until a few days later that Carolyn was reported missing. Her daughter, Kendra, hadn't heard from her mother in a few days and went to her apartment to find out what was wrong. She found the apartment empty, but nothing was out of place. Carolyn's phone and daily medication were both found at the property, though her bank cards and her car were missing. Authorities say Carolyn was last seen by staff leaving the bingo hall where she had won big, presumably heading to her 2002 Lincoln Town Car she had arrived in. There's no indication she left with anybody, and police haven't announced that they're looking for anyone in particular, so it's likely nobody noticed anybody with Carolyn as she left. With Carolyn's phone left at home, police were unable to trace it to her. None of her bank cards have been used either, so tracing her movement through her purchases is also not an option. Thankfully, police do have one lead, but it doesn't give much hope to Carolyn's family. A license plate reader captured Carolyn's car on Interstate 35 in Denton heading north at around 5:30 a.m. the morning after she disappeared. The reader didn't photograph the driver, and Kendra believes it's unlikely her mother was driving. Carolyn takes medication to help her sleep and doesn't wake until around 10 a.m. at the earliest after taking it. As her medication was found at her home, it's possible Carolyn hadn't taken her dose that night and had woken earlier or not slept at all, but her family do not believe this is what happened. Police believe it's possible Carolyn disappeared of her own free will. A spokesperson told local news it was possible she'd gone on a long vacation after winning and simply hadn't told her family. This seems incredibly unlikely, especially given her medication was found at the home. Carolyn has partial dementia and wouldn't leave home without letting someone know. She was 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighed between 200 and 230 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She had brown eyes, scars on both knees, and a strawberry above her left eye. Number 4. 44-year-old mother of 6, Dawnita Wilkerson, is described by her friends and family as a talker. She would spend hours talking on the phone and called her family at least 6 times a day, including a daily morning phone call to her mother at 5 a.m. So when her twin, 15-year-old daughters hadn't heard from her for a couple of hours, they knew there was something wrong. Dawnita was last seen by the twins on June 21st. She was living with her brother in Evansville, Indiana, and it was here that she was last seen. She told her daughters she would be right back before stepping outside. However, she didn't come back. The twins were unable to get in touch with her, and that evening she was reported missing. The following morning, Dawnita didn't call her mother as she had done every day for years, and at 9 a.m., her phone went dark, possibly having been turned off or died. Dawnita's family believes she's in danger. She always kept in touch with her family, and her aunt claimed somebody always knew where she was up until the day of her disappearance. Her family see no reason she would willingly have abandoned them and believe somebody has her. Police also believe someone else was involved in the disappearance. Due to the ongoing nature of the case, very little information has been made public, though we do know it's being treated as a criminal case. It's also possible Dawnita may have crossed state lines. The police have been keeping Dawnita's family up to date with their investigation, though they're not authorized to discuss many details as it may harm the case. The entire community has come together to try to support her friends and family, raising money for the ongoing search for Dawnita. Thousands of flyers have been printed and 2 billboards have been purchased to help raise awareness of the case. Her family are still confident that Dawnita is still alive and will one day be returned home safe, and they're leaving no stone unturned in their search. Dawnita is described as 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighs approximately 145 pounds. She has dark hair and brown eyes. Anyone with any information has been asked to contact Evansville Police Department Adult Investigative Unit. Number 3. While it's summer in the Northern Hemisphere, winter has been in full swing south of the equator, making some search and rescue efforts even more difficult as teams work against the elements to try to find missing people. The weather definitely hampered the search for 61-year-old Adrian Burke from Northlands, New Zealand, and may have been a factor in his disappearance. Adrian's car was found near a bridge crossing the Northern Werrowa River on the morning of July 9th. The river was running high at the time, and later in the day, entire trees were swept downstream. Adrian was also spotted in the area around the same time, although it isn't clear who spotted him or what he was doing. When Adrian's car hadn't been moved later that day, search teams set out about finding Adrian. The 61-year-old was a highly regarded member of the community and had been a volunteer at the Dargaville Volunteer Fire Brigade since 2012. Many members of the search and rescue team knew him personally. The initial focus was on the river, with the assumption Adrian fell in not long after he was seen. Teams searched the river downstream of the bridge, as well as 20 minutes upstream. Drones and sniffer dogs were also used, but no sign of Adrian could be found. Poor visibility and the risk of flooding made the search extremely dangerous for rescue workers, and the search had to be put on hold. Police are appealing for any witnesses who may have seen Adrian between 7:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. on July 9th as they try to work out what he was doing at the bridge and whether he actually ended up in the water. Given his experience as a volunteer, it's possible he'd gotten close to the water to try to help someone else, but ended up in trouble himself. It's also possible Adrian didn't end up in the water at all, and something else happened to him that morning. Without any witnesses, what happened will be impossible to know until Adrian is found. Number 2. 47-year-old Chanel Gilbert from Indianapolis was reported missing on June 9th after failing to show up to a lunch meeting with her daughter. Chanel was a new grandmother and very close to her 2 daughters. She was known for throwing brilliant parties for her family and worked as a substitute teacher at a local school. So her sudden disappearance couldn't have been more out of character. She was due to meet her 19-year-old daughter, Ayanna, at noon for lunch on June 9th. When she didn't arrive, Ayanna tried tracking her phone using a location app. The app traced her mother's phone to an address in the Sungate neighborhood, which she knew was the home of her mother's ex-boyfriend. Chanel's car was parked outside the house, though her ex-boyfriend wouldn't let Ayanna in. He told her Chanel had driven to the house but didn't come inside and wouldn't give her any more information. When he refused to help, Ayanna filed a missing persons report. The ex-boyfriend initially refused to allow police inside his home, but eventually all 3 of the properties he owned were searched. Other than her car, none of Chanel's belongings, including her phone, were found on the properties. However, police did find an article belonging to Chanel not far from her boyfriend's apartment. Due to the ongoing nature of the case, police don't want to issue a description of the item to the public, and they're limiting what information is released as it may be harmful in cracking the case. While police continue to investigate, Chanel's daughters are confident they know who is responsible for their mother's disappearance. According to a Change.org petition supported by Chanel's oldest daughter, her ex-boyfriend knows more about the day she disappeared than he has told police. The boyfriend is described as abusive, and it's believed he could be holding Chanel against her will. As well as initially refusing access to his home, he's allegedly been uncooperative with police and made no effort to try to find Chanel. Chanel's family believe the ex-boyfriend knows her whereabouts but shows no remorse for her children. Despite the family's suspicions, the ex-boyfriend hasn't been arrested or even named by police. Chanel is described as 5 feet 1 inch tall and weighs about 169 pounds. She has black braided hair with gold streaks and was wearing a black sweatsuit at the time of her disappearance. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers. Number 1. James Robinson from Wigan, UK has been missing since May. James started 2020 with a move to Vratsa in West Bulgaria, where he had recently purchased his dream home and a plot of land for just $4,000. His plan had been to grow crops, and he'd already begun buying equipment when a fire tore through his new home days after he arrived. Thankfully, James hadn't been hurt and seemed to take it all in stride. A handyman by trade, he set about renovating the house and moving into a caravan while he completed his work. James was living alone at the time. He had 2 children from a previous relationship, but both live in the UK with their mother. His parents and sister also live in the UK. This meant nobody was with him when on May 10th, he fell while working on the houses. He suffered a head injury and a small amount of blood was found near his phone. Thankfully, he managed to get help. It's not clear if he was conscious and sought it himself or if a passerby found him, and his family are still trying to piece together what happened, but it seems like the latter. He was taken to a local hospital in an ambulance, with an unidentified woman accompanying him. At the hospital, he was given a CT scan where they found bruising on the brain. This didn't seem to concern James too much, as he discharged himself the following day, against the advice of medics who wanted to keep him under observation for a few days. James was last seen leaving the hospital in a taxi and hasn't been seen or heard from since. Now, more than 3 months later, James's family are still appealing for information. His laptop, passport, and driving license were found in the caravan he was living in, while his phone had been left outside, presumably where he fell the day before when he went missing. It's clear he had no intentions of disappearing. He's currently classed as at risk due to his head injury, and many fear-related complications may be responsible for his disappearance. Police are looking to speak to anyone who might have any information, including the woman who accompanied him to the hospital and the taxi driver who drove him away. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.